the destroyer. So, are there any similar ancient texts from this same period of time that give us the same exact wording? Yes, there is. For this, we go back to the Exodus, which was as much a blessing for the Hebrews as it was a terrible curse for the Egyptians. In the aftermath of Exodus, the Egyptians had lost their faith. Their own pantheon of gods had proven impotent before the powers of the Hebrew God. Just as we felt compelled to understand why 9/11 caught us so unawares, the Egyptians needed to understand what happened to them as well. So as the Hebrews began to write the Old Testament, the Egyptians simultaneously penned a massive anthology called the Great Book. The original text was written in ancient Hieratic and was later translated into Phoenician and then on into English. In its original form, the Great Book was the size of a modern encyclopedia, and it offered very precise historical accounts. Two such notable accounts were Noah's flood, or the deluge as it is more commonly known across the four corners of the earth. In the Egyptian account of Sesuda and Hanok, they described an ark very similar to the one built by Noah, and in much the same manner. Then there are the Egyptian accounts of the 10 plagues of Exodus. It is important to keep in mind their version was written by the vanquished, as opposed to the Old Testament account, which was written by the victorious Hebrews. There are many similarities between the two. For example, neither the Hebrews nor the Egyptians mention the actual name of the Pharaoh of Exodus. However, where they differ, and strikingly so, is in what actually caused the 10 plagues of Exodus. According to the ancient Egyptians, what caused the 10 plagues of Exodus was a massive object. They also tell us this same object caused Noah's flood and the destruction of Atlantis as well. Like the Hebrew prophet Jeremiah, they too called it the destroyer and have warned us of its return. In fact, the ancient Egyptians go to great length to warn us that Jeremiah's destroyer will return with catastrophic consequences for all of the earth and those who live upon it, and in these days. What remains of these ancient Egyptian historical accounts are contained within the first 6 books of the Qumran Bible, and they corroborate similar accounts in the Hebrew Torah, or the Old Testament as it is referred to by Christians. Scientifically accurate, these ancient Egyptian accounts read as easily as man-on-the-street TV interviews. This is why noted Planet X historian Greg Jenner says that the Qumran Bible is the Rosetta Stone of Planet X. This is because the Egyptian accounts are so prescient they unlock many Planet X secrets buried within the Holy Bible and numerous other ancient texts and folklore. Many of the harbinger signs of the destroyer's return mentioned within the Qumran Bible have already come to pass, and it is warning us that what will come will be Jeremiah's destroyer. The Qumran Bible gives us many examples of what this is going to be like, and most notable comes from the Book of Manuscripts. When blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ashes. Trees will be destroyed, and all living things engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land, and seas will boil. Assuming our governments know all this, what are they doing about it? And of course, we want to know what's going to happen to us. Well, our governments have known about it for a long time, and yes, they're doing plenty about it. The question is, what are you doing about it? once this all begins to sink in, it can take your breath away, and so the first question we often ask ourselves is, am I nuts? Am I just seeing things? For those who feel this way, you're not nuts and you're not seeing things. What's happening is that the blinders are coming off. When that happens, the first thing we all see is the realization that in 2012, Americans will be burying their dead as their forefathers did during the American Civil War. By the thousands, by the tens of thousands. But that was then, and at that time our government was far less capable of dealing with tragedies like this. After all, times change, don't they? We would all like to think that our governments can save all of us, but let's be practical. There are simply not enough resources to save everyone. In fact, most will be left to fend for themselves because our governments will have a higher agenda. That being, to ensure the survival of our species. This is because our single greatest threat from Planet X will be the manner in which it interacts with our own Sun. As Planet X approaches its closest point to the Sun, a violent cosmic duel will ensue, and it will last for many months. When that happens, our beautiful blue-green planet will be slammed by numerous perfect solar storms and cosmic lightning. In the Colburn Bible, the ancient Egyptians warn us that we will be so stricken with fear that women will become barren and men will become impotent. That is why our governments are doing the right things right now and as quickly as possible. Industrialized governments all across the globe are working feverishly to launch a vast fleet of solar observatories into space between now and 2008. A first-ever human undertaking with a sense of urgency that has not been seen since the early days of the Mercury program. Many of these satellites are already operational, and they will help our governments to sound the alarm in time for us to seek shelter from the deadly radiation of violent solar storms. Our governments are also utilizing every available spacecraft, and the operational status of older spacecraft such as the Hubble Space Telescope and the SOHO Solar Observatory have been extended far beyond their originally planned mission lifespans. Still the same, these assets are vulnerable to violent storms as well. Fortunately, our governments have a plan B. In early 2007, the South Pole Telescope at the U.S. Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station became operational. America spent huge sums to deploy this massive infrared telescope in Antarctica. In terms of tracking the southerly approach of Planet X from beneath the plane of our solar system, it is the perfect instrument at the perfect place and at the perfect time. Eventually the time will come when those chosen to survive the coming cataclysm by our governments are spiritually